Hello, everybody. Welcome to CryptoCoinMindSet. I'm Keith, and as always, I'm here to help you get your mindset on crypto. You're about to watch one of the guest speakers from the Free State Bitcoin Digital Asset Conference, which was held in New Hampshire on September 1st, 2024. Now, I just want to preface this video by saying I went ill-prepared to this conference. First time I had ever been to this conference, but I went ill-prepared. I should have had a separate Wi-Fi connection. So the video itself is not too great, but the audio works fine. So I hope you enjoy this video from one of the guest speakers at the Free State Bitcoin Digital Asset Conference.
But today we're going to be talking about why you should move to New Hampshire so that you can help me build my own country. And then we need to annex Maine. So one of the conversations we'll be having later, of course, is with Eric Brady, three-term senator from Maine. We just snagged him for the Free State Project here in New Hampshire. Anyone who is from out of state, please absolutely do come talk to me or Mark or Matt King, who is wearing the dashing hat. He might be down there at the moment. Mari is also wearing a dashing hat, but if she's in a dress, it's not Matt King. Not today. All right, so shifting gears. Because we're very, very lucky to be in such an incredible space. And I would just like to say thank you to the Fentons for hosting us. For you, Carolyn. I was just saying how grateful we are for this beautiful space. Thank you. All right. So now shifting gears to my porcupine real estate hat, which matches my fabulous hair. I'm delighted to welcome Mark Warden. Mark, I'm going to ask some questions about, but you know, he's an actual Free State OG. And is it correct, Mark, that you were the first politician in the world to accept Bitcoin donations to your race? And what year was that?
Yes, that's true. It was in 2012. I was running for re-election in the State House. And I had a campaign manager, a volunteer helping me out, said, Mark, you should take Bitcoin donations. I said, what's that? How do we do that? And he helped me figure it out. We found a plug-in app to work with a website to accept Bitcoin donations. And yeah, we put it out there back then. You know, it was still nascent with the whole Bitcoin scene. We learned a lot about it at Fest. I did mention that 2011, 2012, people were buying things with Bitcoin. I said, sure, let's support it. I'm a liberty activist, I'm a libertarian, I'm a free stater. I don't understand. I'm probably the least technical guy in this building right now, but let's give it a try. Let's support those who really are on the cutting edge of this technology. And yeah, it's the first state rep candidate in the country to accept Bitcoin donations. And a fun little anecdote is somebody sent me 100 Bitcoin as a contribution. And at the time, it was around $9 Bitcoin. And that's pretty cool. But then my treasurer himself, volunteering on the campaign, said, Mark, you can't take that because you can't accept anonymous donation. And we don't want the campaign to get in trouble. And like a fool, I was a rule follower back then, I guess. So I said it back. Ooh. Anyway, that's a fun story.
So you mentioned there that you were running for office. Can you tell us how many times you've run and sort of what that landscape in terms of your political career looked like?
So I moved to the Free State in 2007, inspired the idea of concentrating liberty-minded people, ANCAPs, conservatives, constitutionalists, agorists from across the country, and libertarians to concentrate and try to change the culture and the ideas as well as the laws. Right? I was involved in politics back in Nevada. I thought this is a great opportunity to get involved in politics and activism here in New Hampshire. So as soon as I had the requisite 2 years of living in New Hampshire as an adult, I ran for state rep. And surprisingly, got elected. It was fairly new to the town, but we launched a new campaign and got elected in 2010. and then reelected in 2012.
And that was wonderful because back in 2010, that was some of the tail end of the Ron Paul revolution. Ron Paul did incredibly well here in New Hampshire, both in 2008 and in 12. In fact, he came second in the New Hampshire primaries on both the Democrat and the Republican ballot. And I thought that was, kind of a neat story about what is really going on here in New Hampshire, because people don't necessarily know this, but independents in New Hampshire, that's a ENTS, although I like that it sounds like independence. So maybe one day we'll have an independence party. But the independents in New Hampshire are the largest group of voters. The Republicans and the Democrats, although they like to front quite heavily, only have under 30% support on each side. So there really is this live and let live, sort of soft, small L libertarian vibe here. But for the most part, we run Republican. Mark ran as a Republican candidate. So you won in 10 and 12. In 10, you guys cut the budget by...
Some of you may remember it as a big Tea Party wave, and nationwide legislatures picked up a lot of seats. And here in New Hampshire, we had the biggest Republican majority in decades, about 300 Republicans to 100 Democrats. And luckily, we had a very fiscally conservative Speaker of the House, Bill O'Brien, who really pushed that. And we actually, the House and the Senate together, reduced state spending by about $1 billion. No other state in the nation that year reduced spending. We were the only ones, and it was significant. It was about 11%. $1 billion isn't right if you're from somewhere else. That's real money.
I mean, the whole state budget is only $11 billion.
Yeah, so 11%. That was historic. It was awesome. And not just did that save taxpayers $1 billion for that 2-year budget, but think about, state budgets, town budgets, everybody grows year after year after year. Mm-hmm. So it reset it, it ratcheted it down. And it took maybe 8 years before it got back up to where it was before we cut it. So cumulatively, I'd say save taxpayers billions of dollars. But it's not about me being elected, really. But in the theme of today, Bitcoin, the blockchain, Web3, what's the overlap? And New Hampshire has really been a nexus of early Bitcoin adopters, and then, of course, everything else, blockchain. Yeah, we're close to Boston. You have a lot of horsepower down there, intellectual horsepower. In the blockchain, Web3, what's the overlap? And New Hampshire has really been a nexus of early Bitcoin adopters, and then, of course, everything else, blockchain. Yeah, we're close to Boston. You have a lot of horsepower down there, intellectual horsepower. And what we've been able to do with sort of the liberty movement in New Hampshire is get a lot of us like me elected to the State House. What that does is help push legislation, push the culture, push the thinking in the right direction. And we like to say that the state has a history of low taxes, low spending, its Second Amendment rights. And famously, a few years ago, the state constitution was amended to add an express or explicit right to privacy. That's important to a lot of us in the OGs and the crypto space. And all that said, New Hampshire is right for continuing this trend towards Web3. You'll hear later today from Representative T. Bannon, who's on the cutting edge of this stuff in the legislature. He helped get passed a couple years ago, a bill to allow to give legal recognition, legislative recognition to DAOs in the state, similar to an LLC.
And that was signed by the governor this 2 months ago.
That's right. So you can ask him the technical aspects of that, but that's great. And then years prior to that, he also helped lead the charge to get
flying cars. He really did.
He also worked with the banking department to the legislation passed that said cryptocurrency would not be regulated by the banking department. So again, these are the tangible victories we have from so many liberty activists getting involved at the legislative level. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it really is. And we will delve into some of the legislative stuff as it relates to real estate as well. Matt Ping and I later will be talking a little bit about how the DAOs can inform tokenization, can inform real estate investment here in the state, in the sense that, they're There's going to be one of you I can't talk into moving, but then I would like you two to own a small piece of New Hampshire. And so we're trying to figure out ways to make that possible, while also being cognizant of things like privacy and all of that, but also being very realistic about the landscape of, you know, the world out there. In fact, I'm just mentally lamenting that back in 2012 for your political thing, it was probably almost easier to take the than it is. But that's a separate conversation. All right, so let's. So you moved in 2008. Have you ever sold property for crypto here in the state, or what have you sold for crypto?
Yeah, similar to taking contributions, I just wanted to test the theory and prove the case that Bitcoin can be used in real estate transactions. So in 2017. I decided to practice on my own house to prove this concept. And I actually sold my house for Bitcoin. I found a guy who had made a lot of money in Ripple, and he was happy to convert that into BTC. And we met at a conference like this or some sort of, and we talked about it. He said, let's give it a try. What do we do? I said, I don't know. Nobody's done it before. I think somebody had sold a condo in Miami for Bitcoin. But as far as I know, nobody's disputed this. It was the first full real estate transaction in New Hampshire for Bitcoin. And we got together, we agreed, and I actually wrote the contract. I'm a real estate agent, have been for a long time, so I wrote the contract specific to Bitcoin. And I said, okay, the cost of the house is 27 Bitcoin. This is back then, who knows what the price was in June 2017. It's around 11 grand.
Yeah.
I think it was around 10 or 11 grand. So the price of the home is 275. Right? I said to honor the buyer and the seller, let's put in a relief valve and additional provisions. We put in specific terms that if the dollar price of Bitcoin based as shown on Coindesk or something like that, went above or below a certain range, then either party could back down. So because it was even back then, it was very volatile. We knew it could go up or down. And the next hard challenge was to find a title company that would do this, because we wanted to. I have a license, we had people legit, I have a record of it, pay the tax, the transfer tax. Luckily, a title company, a community title down in Nashua, was agreeable. That guy was very liberty friendly, the owner. He said, what's a Bitcoin? Explain that. And we got him to open up a wallet, a Coinbase wallet, to accept the deposit. So the buyer in this transaction sent a half Bitcoin to that wallet. Of course, the title company's super nervous now. Could they ever get it out? And then the buyer did inspections, did due diligence, got title insurance, and there would have to be some USD to pay the title. But other than that, we got to the closing table. The value or the price of Bitcoin hadn't changed above or below those thresholds. So we shook hands, and he signed a deed, we signed 2 papers, and he zapped. That's a technical term of it. Zapped the balance due from his phone to my computer using that address. Again, I'm not that technical. And we got the title company to zap, zap the deposit to me. And then I was nervous as hell because I don't know nothing about it. So we waited. I got some friends who know more about it and said, maybe it's Darren told me, you got to wait till you have so many
confirmations.
Yes. Okay. So how do you do that? And we brought up something, the Explorer or something to watch. So we did 3 transaction confirmations. Thank you. And then said, okay, I gave the keys. And the title company guy was just blown away because this happened so fast. It took maybe 15 minutes to get the confirmation. But that was much faster than a wire transfer. Wire transfer can take hours. You know, and mortgages would take much more time to clear all that. So it said president, and then 2 years later, that buyer came back to me and bought another house for Bitcoin. So it proved the concept. It can be done. And now, 27 Bitcoin would buy a lot more house today.
Yeah, and of course, the Free State Project, where Mark serves on the board with me, we started taking Bitcoin super early as well. So for folks who are, and everyone here is probably an expert, I'm on the ZAP side of this technology, but the Pork Fest is an incredible place to come and to learn about it. And then, of course, also Liberty Forum, which will take place next April. And we are looking for speakers for that, for white papers. The idea is pretty much liberty in real life or liberty in reality. So if you have a white paper that is crypto related in any way and you're like, hey, this would actually make practical liberty better, which is what we are all attempting to because it's also, you need the people who are like, well, I don't really understand the tech and I don't know what a hash is and, what is what. But I'm willing to try it because that sounds cool. And, we think it can make the world a better place. All right. So now we've been chit-chatting a long time. Someone's going to give me, okay. I do want to talk a little bit about the bills that have come up. You mentioned the DAO, right? That's Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. And Matt and I will probably delve into that in a fair amount of detail. But let's talk a little bit about the housing market here in New Hampshire, just briefly, because what the takeaway here should be like, if you want to buy a house with Bitcoin, we want to talk to you. You want to sell a house for crypto, I want to talk to you. But you need to understand some things about the housing market here in New Hampshire, including the following. There is a housing shortage. There are currently only 2,200 houses for sale in the entire New Hampshire. Wow. If your job, like mine, is to bring thousands of people to New Hampshire, and you understand economics, you understand scarcity is an issue. So I'm lighting a fire under your asses. Don't wait. Like, New Hampshire is never going to get cheap. That's just a reality, right? We have limited land. We have limited stock, until we start to do things like we are trying to do up at the State House. So recently, because we have this incredible housing shortage, why?
I think the reason, but going back to the housing crash, which is in part caused by malinvestment because of bad federal government regulations, builders basically went broke or they just got out of business after 2009. So there are very few builders still in the business building new homes or apartment buildings. That's a big thing. Then when the COVID nonsense hit, we saw supply chain issues, cost of labor and materials skyrocket. It really jumped up, and it hasn't come down that much. Yes, lumber has come down, the labor has not. So the builders take a lot of risk in developing apartment buildings and building new houses. And unless they can make a buck on it, they're not going to do it. So there's a lot of risk involved. And with land prices being high and input costs being so high, there's just not that much construction going on for new construction. Of course, the other elephant in the room is regulation. We're talking about regulation and legislation today. What can we do? In New Hampshire, you have a lot of towns that are very slow to issue building permits, and they have a lot of outspoken townsfolk who don't want to do construction.
NIMBY is the most we like to call it.
Not in my backyard. There's still a lot of that. It's rampant in some of these quaint towns in New Hampshire. So they impose a lot of zoning regulations and barriers to new construction. That said, there are a few towns, notably Grafton, Leinster, that have no zoning regulations, so it's a bit easier there. But these are also towns that are a bit remote, and people want to live near the urban centers. And most of these towns just make it really difficult to build either apartment buildings or houses, particularly with things like minimum setback requirements, minimum lot sizes. That's a big one in New Hampshire. We want to keep this sort of bucolic, rural environment like we have here, but it makes it tough if your minimum lot size is 1 acre, or 5 acres, or 2 acres, or 10 acres to pencil out building a single family house.
Right, and just so folks know, there is an incredible zoning tool that Jason Sarens, who's the founder of the Free State Project, developed in conjunction with St. Anselm, which is a private school in Goffstown. And it's called nhzoningatlas.org, I believe. But anyway, some order of those words will get you there. The Zoning Atlas. And it is so granular. You can input a street address and it'll tell you what the zoning is in that area. I was surprised to learn. I always just thought there were 1 or 2 or 3 areas in New Hampshire that don't have zoning, but actually there are 21. And by way of example, I just wanted to show a potential customer from Connecticut a space in a town where it turned out there was no zoning. It was 35 acres. No, sorry, it was 23 acres with a river in a valley, and it had a house on it that you could live in. I mean, it was from the 40s, and there's probably some lead, but don't eat the window. And it was, it was under $400,000. And I'm like, so again, I think there's a lot of opportunity here also for people who perhaps want to be like, what could one do in a place that there's no zoning, Because as Starlink opens up, you don't need to be in a city anymore to have the quality of life. As long as you know how to cook, the drones are going to be able to bring you the ingredients, and the Starlink's going to be able to give you the internet. So now views become the game, right? So, so there was recently a bill that passed on ADUs, right? So help them understand what that's sort of about.
Yeah, everything in the legislature moves very slowly at a glacial speed. So we like to talk about these little pictures we have. Like, they seem minor if you're a libertarian, but we'll take what we can get.
Hey, we're still winning at least.
Yeah, we're definitely going in the right direction. ADU stands for accessory dwelling unit. Some people call it mother-in-law quarters. Some people call it it's in addition to your house, typically the kitchen, the bathroom, and a bedroom. Or maybe a college student, if you still want to live with you, or if you have 2 or 3 generations living in the same household, they need to expand. They can add this addition. And it used to be prohibited in some towns because of their zoning regulations. So the legislature had to step in and make a statewide statute that towns cannot prohibit this ADU or accessory dwelling units. We don't. Sounds good. Now, unfortunately, there were still some regulations, like a town could impose a certain minimum square footage or maximum square footage, and a lot of septic regulations. They might have parking regulations, but it's a slight step in the right direction, and we're going to continue to try to expand that. Another one that we're working on, it didn't pass this year, but I think it has some good bipartisan support, is to allow by right somebody to build a duplex in a single family residence zoning throughout the state. Again, it would basically tell towns they can no longer ban or prohibit those types of construction.
So that's an interesting thing you just mentioned there is local control in New Hampshire. It's kind of interesting the way the state's set up a little bit. So towns have a lot of local control, which as a libertarian, I actually like, right? It's a smaller unit than the state. So you just have to fight your neighbors, you don't have to fight the men. So I like my fights up close and personal, and so it's this constant tension between the town control, and then sometimes you're like, oh wait, towns, you guys are being really, really stupid. Now we got to tell you from the state what to do, and so I always have this tension between. It's very important as you come here, and it takes 2 years, as Mark mentioned, to run for the state house. It actually takes 7 years to run for a state senate as well as governor. But you can immediately, if you're a resident of a town, start to run for boards. People can start serving on zoning boards, library boards, budget committees, and that kind of stuff. And then because we have this concentrated town control, most towns in New Hampshire still have a town hall meeting once every 2 years. Maybe it's once every year, I forget. But where you go to the town hall and you fight about the line items on the budget, and you can have a massive impact on how your town is run on that local level as well. I feel like we're forgetting some bills. I know Keith will be speaking later. He introduced a bill around nuclear. Do you know anything about that?
A little bit. This is sort of the last piece of the puzzle in place for particularly our minor friends, and also for businesses to relocate to New Hampshire. The cost of energy is very high here, relatively speaking, to other parts of the country. Certainly the Midwest, Texas, out west, it's a lot cheaper. And the only way to really bring down the cost of power is to build nuclear. and that they're now that the technology is there to have these small modular reactors that can fit on 1 acre of land. They don't need a big river or ocean nearby. They don't have nearly the water requirement. They can, a single small modular reactor can power a town of 20,000 people, as I understand it. So there are manufacturers out there, and they've come and presented to legislative committees here in the state. Again, Keith Ammon is at the forefront of pushing that regulation along with the other people on the Energy Committee. And it's going to happen, but everything moves so darn slowly, and the incumbents, are always going to put up a fight against it.
So if you want to get rid of a really stinky incumbent, there is a primary race, and the primary will take place next Tuesday, the 10th of September, so a couple of weeks. And Emily Phillips, so first of all, we should add, New Hampshire has a nuclear reactor. It is currently running. It supplies 25% of the Eastern Seaboard's energy. Did anyone in this town? You don't know that. No one talks about it. So when I say I'm going to build my own country, I also recognize that I'm probably going to have to bribe someone, because that's how politics works. So I think if the worst case scenario that we do in New Hampshire is we let another reactor go up, and we say the cost of doing business here in New Hampshire is you got to give us all free energy, and from there you can export it, then maybe that's the way we do it. So that is like a soft little plan I have, but in the meanwhile, maybe we can get some small modular reactors here, of course, within that same vision of you could live anywhere. When you start to look at these regions and you start to look at things like, oh, could we open up this land because we could put a nuclear reactor here and run something, right? Then things start to become really interesting. And I genuinely, people think I'm kidding when I say, help me build our own country. But I think if that's your mindset, if you actually wrap your head around that and you go, we are playing the game of life and we can build our own country, what would that look like? Then that is why I want you to move to New Hampshire, because we're doing it. We just need reinforcements. We need people with creative ideas. We need people to move out of the city and come build something phenomenal and that we've just never seen before. So,
all right. I hope you enjoyed that video. And if you want to see all the videos from the Digital Asset Conference, check out this playlist right here. In this playlist, I'll have all the videos from all the speakers from the Free State Bitcoin Digital Asset Conference in New Hampshire. So click on this playlist and I will see you there.